So this is going to be SV1 focus week, and I think I'm going to focus today on cards that are in Scarlet and Violet base that are kind of pricey or a little bit more expensive than what an average collector might be comfortable spending, and an alternative option on buying these cards, these artworks, for much cheaper. So we're going to start off with Drowsy, right? Drowsy has seen a lot of spike lately. If we look at the graph, a lot of people will scream manipulation based off of this. I think this was more FOMO than manipulation. I think a lot of people pointed out that Drowsy was spiking at $50, and a lot of people started buying out Drowsy thinking it's going to continue spiking. It has retracted a bit. Market price is sitting at about $60, and you can find copies sub $60 now. But even then, a lot of people are like, man, $60 for Drowsy is quite expensive. And I can kind of agree. $60 for one illustration rare is a little bit on the pricier side, especially if you're not a high-end collector and you're somebody who's on a limited budget. I work myself as a teacher for my daytime career. My budget on trading cards is not as extravagant as other people's. So if you want to buy Drowsy, guys, buy the Japanese copy. It's only $20 a copy, $22 a copy. It is much more affordable. I just bought a Japanese copy off of eBay myself for $20, and it was from a US based seller. These sellers right here are US based, so you could spend $23, and there are plenty of copies available, so it's not like this card is at a risk of selling out and spiking up anytime soon. Obviously, we've seen an uptick in interest for these cards. Because clearly the movement was very low, and then the minute that the English copy spiked up, a lot of people retracted back and bought the Japanese copy because it is much more affordable. When it comes to risk versus reward, right? The Drowsy on SV1, the English version, is riskier because it's $60 a copy, and if it ever retracts back to this, you lose $30 easy, right? I said in a previous video that I think Drowsy easily has the chance to become the Magikarp of SV1, where it's just the illustration rare that just takes off to the moon, like Magikarp did for Paldea Evolved. So personally, I think that this card has that potential, but at the same time, if you wanted to not have such a risky, I guess you could say, investment or purchase that can easily lose value, buying the Japanese copy is much less of a risk. Sure, Japanese, it was at $2 just a couple months ago. I don't think it'll retract back to $2, but if it retracts back to about $9, you only lose about $10 instead of $30, and it's just a much better deal to buy, especially if you're somebody who doesn't use the argument that you like to read your cards, or you would just prefer English because it's better value or whatever. The Japanese copy is an affordable option, and that's going to be the focus of the video, because when we look at Dondozo, for example, Dondozo is about $6, $7, spiking up over time, and then it's at $12 market now. It has climbed over time, and you see here that on the listings, right, it climbs up pretty quickly, right? But if you wanted to buy a Japanese copy, you can get copies for like $4, $5. It is much affordable. Obviously, there's not a lot of movement on TCG Player, and I think that's because eBay even has cheaper prices. So you can easily find Dondozo for a much more affordable price. And this is another card I personally recommend picking up because I think this artwork is stunning. It is done by Akira Ogawa. Beautiful artwork. Stunning artwork from this artist. Graveyard by Soso is one of the cards that saw a recent spike. I mentioned this in my previous video, how it was manipulated, but not in your traditional buyout sense manipulated. It was that somebody bought a lot of copies, people FOMO'd out, and it caused a spike in the card. But clearly people were not willing to pay this price because the amount of sales at $25 decreased massively, and then it slowly has trickled down. So clearly the sales numbers for this higher price, people are not wanting to pay it as much. But if you want to buy this card for a much more affordable price, Japanese has it for $2 to $3, $4, right? It is a very affordable card in Japanese. Probably the most affordable card on this list out of all the art, out of all the beautiful artworks that we're gonna see. You got King Gambit, who, once again, he's a market price of only $8. But if you wanted to save some money, you can buy Japanese copies for like $2, $3. It is very, very affordable in Japanese. It looks just as good as the English copy. As a matter of fact, I think the coloring on it and the quality of the card just looks a little bit better. Ralts, though, on the other hand, and Curlia, the market price on these cards is insane. And these are natural growth. This is not, as you can see, buyout attempts. This is natural growth over time, because the sales for these cards have been consistent from the 20 and 30 range. Same with Curlia. Curlia, sure, there was a, you could say, a buyout attempt here, but it didn't spike up the card. And it's just been consistently climbing over time. So I think Curlia and Ralts are natural growth. I think these are both natural growths over time, just because they are fan favorites. They are Gen 3 popular Pokemon who are just, everybody loves. Everybody loves Gardevoir, everybody loves Gallade, and they're just fan favorites that if I had to say they were safe investments at the beginning, or if I had to determine 2 cards that were safe investments at the beginning, I would have told you the Ralts line as number 1. Just because they were fan favorites. But if you want to save some money, you can buy the Ralts for $11 for $12 for TCG player prices. Probably cheaper on eBay. You can buy the Curlia for about $12 as well. So for the price of 1 Ralts, or for less than the price of 1 Ralts, or less than the price of 1 English Curlia, you can buy both Japanese Ralts and Curlia. It's $25 for both of them after taxes. It is $30 plus for Ralts or Curlia in English. So you can buy both the Japanese copies for much, much cheaper. But I do want to make one note for those of you that don't know. If you're wanting the complete line of Ralts, Curlia, and Gardevoir, it is actually cheaper to buy all 3 copies in English, because the special art rare for the Japanese version is like $60, $70 on eBay. So it is much, much cheaper to buy the 3 English copies if you want Gardevoir as well. But if you wanted to mix it up, if you're comfortable with having 2 Japanese copies and an English copy, you could buy Japanese Ralts and Curlia, and then you could buy English Gardevoir, and you spend about $50, $55 for the entire line, which is an amazing deal. So personally, that's just my takeaway on how I would approach it. I would buy Japanese Ralts and Curlia and English Gardevoir, because the artworks still fit together. Sure, the language doesn't, but the artworks do, right? But if you wanted the same language, English is the cheaper option, just because the special illustration rare Gardevoir is much cheaper than the special art rare Gardevoir. Now, when it comes to Slowpoke, this was a card, by the way, please ignore these. That is insane. But Hollow, the Slowpoke, $36. And what's crazy is it's hard to tell if there was manipulation, because Slowpoke was a card that was getting 30 sales in January, right? And then you have a string of days where it was 60 consistent sales at $20 and then $30. I can't tell you if this is manipulation or not. It may be, but it could also be the fact that it is a Gen 1 Pokemon. The artwork is a really good piece of art, so people might just really want this card. But you see here that the lowest copies, it easily goes into the 40s. There's very few copies that are in the 30s, and it easily goes into the 40s. And then if we go to page 2 to look at the copies available, it climbs up quickly past $45 to almost $50 a copy. So this price is not looking as bad, considering how quickly this card's probably going to go up to 50 with the amount of under 45s available on the market. It's a very low number. But once again, if you feel that that's a risky purchase, if you feel like that price is just way too much, considering that this card was a $15 card just a couple months ago, and even just a few weeks ago it was under $25, the Japanese copy, $7, $8 a copy, right? It's not that risky of a purchase. Sure, it looked like there was an attempt to either manipulate it or just a bunch of people buying out Japanese copies because the English copies were really expensive. But you're still getting it for less than $10, especially if you shop on eBay. So, guys, once again, another card that if you're going to buy a copy, it might just be more affordable to buy a Japanese copy, because if you lose money on it, if these cards retract, you're losing less money buying the Japanese copy. And then last but not least, Cloth. It's hard to say if this was a attempt at a buyout, because look at it, only 13 sales, right? But it does spike up a bit, but it is now at a $9 market price. Like, it has gone up quite a bit over time. Sure, there's some people who apparently have near mint copies for like $6, but it looks like it's easily going above a $10 price tag. This one's weird because look at the sales, right? There's not a lot of demand for this card. So this definitely feels like an artificial rise. Like this does not feel like a natural rise. So personally, I would not spend over $10 on this card. This is like a $5 card at most. It's cloth. He is not a popular Pokemon. The artwork is not one of the better artworks in the set. No hate to Mina, but this is just not a very dynamic artwork. It's not a stunning artwork, and it is a very, very unpopular Pokemon. So the growth on this one just feels kind of wild to me, and I don't think it's natural because look at the amount of sales, right? What is this? Maybe 50 sales in the past 3 months? Like, it's not a card that's moving a lot, right? So the price rise doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't feel like manipulation because there was no massive buyout. 13 sales is not a buyout, especially if there's 55 current listings. What this tells me is that people probably predicted it was going up and they readjusted their prices to go higher. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. But if you buy Japanese copies, you're spending like $3 a card, guys. So if you want to buy a Japanese copy, there's not a lot of copies moving, but you can easily get this for $2, $3 on eBay, and it's just a much, much, much more affordable version of this card. Sure, I don't think there's many people out there that are watching this video. It's like, man, I really want this cloth card. But if you're somebody who wants to collect it, if you're somebody who needs this card in your collection, you missed out on it, you're trying to get all the illustration rares from Scarlet Violet base, this may be a better option for you just because it is much more affordable. And once again, there are some cards in this list that just, their growth makes no sense. Cloth is one of them, right? Dondozo is kind of one of them because Dondozo doesn't have a lot of consistent sales, right? It's not like Drowsy where there's 70, 80 cells in a day, 40, 50 cells in a day. I'm talking the max cells you get in a day is 15. And considering how many copies of these cards are on the market, it makes no sense that this card is now at a $9 market price. So personally for me, this is one of the cards that if I needed it in my collection, if Dondozo was one of the cards I needed in my collection, I would buy Japanese just to not spend too much money on a card that is clearly going to retract. On the other hand, though, something like Drowsy, something like Slowpoke, there's a chance these cards don't retract, and they may be good pickups now. So this is kind of like where I would say, don't listen to a YouTuber, and it's funny saying that with me recording this video, but it's like, do your best guess on what you think will happen with the card. Do you think this card is a good buy? And if you don't think it's a good buy, but you really want that artwork, go buy Japanese, right? Or if the card released in Korean or Chinese, go buy it in that language because it's probably going to be much, 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 much more affordable than it will be in English. And it's probably less of a risk if you're uncomfortable. If you think Drowsy at $60 is a bad buy, but you really want the Drowsy card, go buy it in another language, right? If you think that Slowpoke is a bad buy at the slowly creeping up $50 price tag, go buy it in another language. If you think Cloth is not a $10 card, which I personally don't think it is, go buy it in Japanese for $2, right? So you do have options, right? A lot of people are on Twitter right now. They are complaining about these cards being manipulated. They're complaining about these cards being insanely priced. But there are cheaper alternatives to get these same cards. Unless you're playing the game, I don't see why reading the attack, rest, and headbutt matters to you, right? Sure, maybe it really matters that you see the name Slowpoke, but you get the same card here, right? They're the same artwork. It's the same artist. It's the same card layout. The only difference is this says Slowpoke in Japanese. That's all, right? So if you're somebody who's willing to collect other languages, this is a better option for you right now. And that's just my personal recommendation. Now, there are a lot of Scarlet and Violet base cards that I may have missed out on. Are there any other cards that you would recommend? If there's a card you recommend that I did not include in this video, make sure you comment it down below so that way people can look in the comments and be like, oh, there's some other cards that Nomad didn't mention that I think are really good buys. So let me go pick those up as well. I will also do a pinned comment down below, or I'll put in the description of all these cards here and affiliate links. So if you want to go check those out, you can support the channel by picking up some of these cards through those TCG player affiliate links, and it will help me out. And you pay no extra, right? You're still buying the same cards at the same prices. You're not paying extra. You don't have to pay me anything to support the channel, and you still support the channel. So if you want to pick up one of these cards, I'll post all the links down in the pinned comments below. And guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos like this, also let me know down in the comment section below. If so, I may do weekly things where I talk about Paldea Evolved. I could talk about prismatic evolutions and cards that are affordable in other languages, or cards that are worth picking up now, that sort of thing. But guys, I enjoyed the video. Hope you guys did too. And as always, remember to keep it classy and stay awesome.